The FDA on Monday announced full approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for those 16 years of age and older in the United States. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced a relief plan for the victims of Hurricane Grace, which resulted in 11 deaths over the weekend in Mexico. Heavy fighting between the Taliban and militia members in Panjshir, Kabul, took place. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration on Monday announced full approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for those 16 years of age and older. The measure, announced by the FDA, is expected to contribute to strengthening immunization efforts in the United States, where there is a strong anti-vaccine movement that has accentuated distrust among people who avoid vaccination. The decision to grant full approval was based on updated data from the drug's clinical trial, including longer duration of follow-up with safety and efficacy evaluated among more than 40,000 people. The vaccine is still available under emergency use authorization for adolescents, but now physicians can prescribe it to children if they believe it will be beneficial.
Con una seguridad y eficacia evaluadas entre más de 40.000 personas. La vacuna sigue estando disponible bajo autorización de uso de emergencia para adolescentes de 12 a 15 años.
Today is really an important day as the FDA has approved the first COVID-19 vaccine. And as you heard, the vaccine has been known as the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine and will now be marketed as Comirnaty for the prevention of COVID-19 disease in individuals 16 years of age and older. This is a pivotal moment for our country in the fight against the pandemic. While this and other vaccines have met the FDA's rigorous scientific standards for emergency use authorization, as the first FDA-approved COVID-19 vaccine, the public can be confident that this vaccine meets the FDA's gold standards for safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing quality that we require for an approved product.
After the FDA's announcement, President Joe Biden addressed those waiting for the full approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine.
Process, the FDA has reaffirmed its findings that the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine is safe and effective, and the FDA has given its full and final approval. So let me say this loudly and clearly. If you're one of the millions of Americans who said that they will not get the shot until it has full and final approval of the FDA, it has now happened. The moment you've been waiting for is here. It's time for you to go get your vaccination and get it today.
And now we continue. Vietnam fully confined its biggest city, Ho Chi Minh, on Monday. The civil security forces spread across different regions of the country to double efforts in the task of preventing the COVID-19 pandemic's expansion. In response to the announcement of the Communist Party's Secretary General Nguyen Phu Trong, the Ministry of Public Security mobilized assets to assist Ho Chi Minh City and the southern areas. Police officials informed that during the fourth outbreak of coronavirus, public security was the first institution to organize and activate a Southern Command for anti-epidemic prevention and the control in the capital and nearby provincial zones. The more than 9 million people living in the conversion and political center of Vietnam face a new outbreak that exceeds the 337,000 cases of infection and the 7,000 deaths due to the disease. New Zealand's nationwide lockdown is extended until at least the end of the week, as the country battles to contain an outbreak of the Delta variant of COVID-19. On Monday, New Zealand recorded another 35 new coronavirus cases, bringing the number to 107. So far, the nation has tested about 3% of its population over the past week, with long queues at testing facilities as more people seem concerned about a possible spread. Health officials said all the cases have now been transferred to an isolation facility under strict infection, prevention, and control standards, including the use of full personal protective equipment. More than 300 locations are listed for potential exposure, including schools, universities, hospitals, churches, bars, restaurants, airports, and the casino. Also, about 13,000 close contacts of the confirmed cases have now been identified and are being tested.
We're just trying to get tested just because we've been to so many locations of interest. We've got a lot of family members that we need to take care of as well, a bit older than us as well. So yeah, it's just important that we get tested and make sure we're in the clear, mainly.
The Brazilian Federal Court, the District Court, annulled another lawsuit against former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva due to lack of evidence. Judge Poliana Alves said the cause against the former mandatory was not demonstrated in the accusatory ratification. The now withdrawn complaint was filed by the Public Prosecutor's Office in the case of the Atabaia site, which sought to reopen a closed process because of alleged corruption and money laundering related to the Odebrecht case. However, the court again ruled in favor of Lula and reiterated that the complaint did not have convincing evidence. The annulment of the Atabaia site case against the leader joins 16 other court decisions and filed lawsuits in which Lula was totally acquitted, given the inconsistencies of the accusations. Thousands of indigenous protesters began a week of mobilizations in Brasilia to put pressure on Congress and the Supreme Court to discuss projects that are crucial and also paramount for the future of their rights and territories. They reject a series of executive bills advancing in the Brazilian Congress, which are considered as threats to their survival and the protection of the environment. These include a new legislation that aims to introduce a time frame criterion for the delimitation of indigenous lands, recognizing as ancestral only those that were occupied by them where the 1988 Constitution was enacted. Since Bolsonaro came to power, the indigenous people have multiplied their complaints about invasions of their lands, violence, and other violations of their rights. In Venezuela, the public consultation of the National Communal Parliament's draft bill began on Monday. It is designed to consolidate popular power and the construction of a fully democratic state. The schedule was debated last Wednesday in the Permanent Commission for Communal Development, and it institutes the creation of an information campaign on the mechanisms that will be adapted to organize economic and social activities by regions and by sectors. A formal consultation is set by lawmakers to end on September 5th. According to the already approved work agenda, the public consultation, which will conclude by September 19th, is essential to reinforce participative democracy, just as the Venezuelan constitution dictates it. The bill's progression was certified earlier this year after the first round of discussions in an ordinary session of the legislative branch. We'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, announced that he will launch a relief plan for the victims of the Hurricane Grace, which resulted in 11 deaths over the weekend in the country.
We are going to have a meeting to initiate a plan to support the victims. The electric power service is being reestablished, which was very badly affected. The state government, the National Defense Secretariat, the Navy, are delivering supplies. Yesterday afternoon, a plane with water left for Costa Rica. Now, another one is being loaded with bottles of water for that region, and we are going to continue with our support. We are going to carry out a plan of attention to all the victims.
24 people, including 4 children, were pulled alive from a pile of rubble in Haiti 1 week after a devastating earthquake. The Directorate of Civil Protection said the victims were found alive this weekend near Peak Macaya, the country's second largest mountain. The survivors were safely rescued and immediately taken in a helicopter for treatment. The Civil Protection Agency also reported that the death toll from the earthquake has risen to more than 2,000, with over 300 others missing and presumed dead. The spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, Stéphane Dujarric, said the International Organization for Migration, the IOM, will give resources to the Haitian government to help the families impacted by the earthquake.
The Migration Agency, IOM, launched a flash appeal for $15 million to help families impacted by the earthquake. The resources will help Haitian authorities with housing, temporary shelter, mental health support, and COVID-19 prevention for some 170,000 families left critically vulnerable by the recent earthquake that struck southern Haiti. IOM has already set up bases in the most affected areas in additional hubs in Jérémie, La Caille, and Miragoan. It is also using satellite imagery to analyze damage and distribute thousands of plastic sheets, hygiene kits, blankets, collapsible jerry cans, and kitchen to those impacted. And as we mentioned, the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed wrapped up her visit on Friday afternoon. She assured Haitians that the UN remains committed to working under the leadership of national and local authorities to assist not only in providing life-saving support for the immediate response to the earthquake, but also during the reconstruction phase.
And fires continue to spread in eastern Bolivia, leaving large areas of forest covered in ash and smoke, as several protected natural reserves are being impacted. Deputy Minister for Environment and Water, Magin Herrera, stated that more than 200,000 hectares have been devastated in the region, bordering Brazil and Paraguay. Santa Cruz Fire Department reported that 15 fires have yet to be contained and continue to threaten, among others, the Nimbaguazu Conservation Area. According to the Friends of Nature Foundation, across Bolivia up to the end of July, more than 700,000 hectares have burned, 62% more than during the same period in 2020.
734,568 hectares have already been affected by the fires in Santa Cruz, 36,000 in La Paz, 7,000 in Cochabamba, 4,600 in Panda and Tarija, Chuquisaca, Potosí, Oruro. We have a national forest monitoring systems and assessments on public websites that citizens can access. We not only have a technical plan to intervene in the various fires the municipality suffers, but to coordinate all actions related to the logistics required for this type of intervention. In that sense, fuel, food, and hydration are banned for all those who are working in the area.
Greece Fires Department sent air and ground assets to at least 2 new fires in areas already hit by fire this summer, amid strong winds that hampered extinguishing efforts. The first one broke out in the morning on the country's second largest island, Evia, which already saw its northern area burnt this month by a fire that raged for more than 10 days. The second blaze in the area of Vilia, northwest of Athens, when a large fire was brought under control on Friday. Thousands of people have been forced to flee as the flames have ravaged forest, farmland, homes and businesses. One volunteer firefighter died and at least 4 more were hospitalized with burns. The country's firefighting capacity has been pushed to the limit, and the government called for international assistance this month as 4 major fires burned in different parts of the country.
Un segundo incendio se desencadenó en Vilia.
Supporters of the environmental campaign group Extinction Rebellion gathered on the Trafalgar Square outside of the National Gallery in London for the first day of a 2-week climate change protest campaign. The action is named Impossible Rebellion, and thousands of people expected to take part. The protesters have blocked one of the Covent Garden's busiest junctions of the first day of the group's latest wave of protests, targeting London. This new wave of protests came after the latest IPCC report suggested that the human civilization may have passed a crucial tipping point in carbon dioxide emissions. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Fighting took place late Monday between the Taliban and local militia members in Panjshir, a stronghold of resistance northeast of the capital, Kabul. Ahmad Massoud, the son of the mythical national hero Ahmad Shah Massoud, was leading the fight against the radicals in the mythical valley that has never been defeated, neither by the foreign troops nor by the Taliban. Hundreds of mujahideen loyal to the Islamic Emirate moved to the north of Kabul. Local militia reaffirms they will not surrender Panjshir, although Taliban spokesperson said the group have surrendered the territory. Massoud called for a broad-based inclusive government with the participation of the Taliban, and where all ethnic groups of the country are represented. And the Taliban warned there will be consequences if the United States and its allies extend their presence in Afghanistan beyond next week, as chaos continued to overwhelm Kabul's airport. To manage the chaotic airlifting of foreigners and Afghans, thousands of soldiers have poured back into Afghanistan, with pressure growing on Washington to extend the deadline. Taliban spokesperson Suhail Sahin said if the U.S. or its allies stayed beyond the agreed deadline, it will be as if they extended the occupation. Iran's foreign ministry called on all parties in Afghanistan to refrain from using violence. As also said, Tehran supports the establishment of an inclusive government in Kabul.
All groups and political parties in Afghanistan must refrain from using force and proceed using negotiation and talks. The Islamic Republic of Iran is in constant communication with all political sides in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's history shows the country's crisis has no military solution, just how the occupation was not a solution.
Russia said it will not interfere in the conflict between the Taliban and their opponents in Afghanistan. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that leaders of the Collective Security Treaty Organization member states discussed the standoff and its implications of another civil war in Afghanistan, and also emphasized no one is going to intervene in these events. The Collective Security Treaty Organization includes Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, and also Tajikistan. In other news, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh condemned Israel's annexation plans of the occupied territories in the West Bank and East Jerusalem.
We condemn the intention of the so-called Jewish National Fund to agree to allocate huge sums of money to seize thousands of meters square in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, to expand settlements, which embodies the efforts to annex and destroy the possibility of establishing a Palestinian state. We will send quantities of medicines and supplies to hospitals in Lebanon, produced by Palestinian factories, including about 85 types of medicines and medical supplies.
The Mozambique trial of 19 suspects linked to a $2 billion secret loan scandal that plunged the country into its worst ever financial crisis started this Monday. The definitive charge sheet from the public prosecutor's office included blackmail, forgery, embezzlement, and money laundering charges against 19 people. Among them is Ndambi Gebusa, son of former President Armando Gebusa. Mozambique's largest ever financial scandal involved senior government officials, particularly from the country's security and intelligence service. The fraudulent scheme involved setting up 3 security-linked companies, which eventually borrowed over $2 billion from the banks Credit Suisse and VTB of Russia. The trial is expected to last for at least 45 days. The government of China denounced the United States for violating international law by implementing coercive measures against the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline.
Regarding the issue of Navalny, China has stated their position that it is entirely Russia's domestic affair on multiple occasions. It is unfair for the relevant parties to presume guilt of the Russian side before investigating thoroughly for the truth. Still less should they impose unilateral sanctions under the pretext of presumed guilt. As for the Nord Stream 2 project, the US side slapped unreasonable sanctions on normal cooperation between two sovereign states under its domestic law. What the US has done tramples on international law and the basic norms governing international relations, and fully exposes the long-term hegemonic mentality and bullying practice of the US side, which will gain no support and surely face rejection by the international community.
The Tokyo Paralympic Games opened on Tuesday, while the coronavirus still threatens Japan, which is facing a sharp rise in infections. As occurred during the Olympic Games, the Paralympic competitions will be held under strict sanitary measures that include the absence of spectators at almost all events. Athletes will only be allowed to enter the Paralympic Village shortly before their event and must leave 48 hours after competing. They will have daily PCR testing and limited mobility between training, competition, and village venues. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.